This is breaking news.
Happening right now, New York City Schools Chancellor David Banks is laying
proficiency in this city every year. No one seems to give a goddamn. It's about little Betty, who enters a school in one part of the city and sees all of the great things in the school environment, but then she goes to her home school and she doesn't have the basic things that she deserves. It's about a city where we spend over $30 billion a year and fail our children every year. And it's not because we don't have the great, dedicated educators who love our babies and love our children. I went into your schools, I spoke with you, sat down with your principals, your teachers, and you've been frustrated like I've been frustrated. So this is not David's day, it is your day. For all those who have been saying year after year, Coach, get me in the game. Coach, let me play this game of life. Let me help these children. It's about Tracy. In all of her years of wanting to help children and talking to me countless number of years about how we could do better. That's what this moment is about. I spent 8 years talking to David, telling him what we must do, not if, but when I become mayor. This is in Esther 4:14 moment for those of you with a biblical connection. God made us for such a time like this. We've watched our children give up over and over again. And now we're at a time and a moment where this dyslexia mayor, this mayor that was arrested at 15, this mayor that was a dishwasher, this mayor that worked in the mailroom, this mayor that went to school at night, this mayor that was told you could never become anything, this mayor that understands what it is to put on a bulletproof vest and protect children and families of the city while they believe we surrendered and gave up on them. This mayor that is one of those children that's in our schools every day is finally able to pick a chancellor that is one of them. We need David and you at this moment. And if you're not part of this team and committed to finally turning around this bureaucracy that is professionalized and has professionalized failing children, failing teachers, failing principals, failing school crossing guards, failing those security agents, failing. If you are not part of this team, then this is not the moment to be in this administration. We are committed and dedicated to turning around this school system. And if we get it right here, it is going to cascade throughout this entire country. Every city you go to, you see the same results. Black, brown, and immigrant babies are being failed. And then when you do the analysis, the energy of young Jaquan, why are the results the same? IEPs, learning disabilities, homeless shelters, being denied services. Time to take this administration upstream. Let's stop pushing these children into the river and pulling them out downstream. Let's go upstream. Not only must we go upstream with our activity, we must go upstream with our minds. Far too many people don't believe these children can do better. I know they can do better. And that is why I picked Chancellor David Banks to head the largest school system in this country. We will not fail. Chancellor Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning. And thank you all for joining me here today at Tweed, virtually on our live stream, and all of you who are here in person. Just over 2 months after becoming Chancellor, I thought it would be a good time to share with all of you more detail about my vision for New York City Public Schools and how we're going to go about achieving that vision together. I also want to share my gratitude for what we have already accomplished in a very short period of time. First, Mayor Adams and I can't tell you how proud we are of our students, families, teachers, and staff for stepping up in the face of the Omicron virus surge. Together with the New York City Department of Health, the Test and Trace Corps, the New York City Police Department, Governor Kathy Hochul, UFT President Michael Mulgrew, who's joined us today, CSA President Mark Conazero, DC 37 President, Executive Director Henry Garrido, Local 237 President Greg Floyd, 891 President Robert Troller, and many other partners. Our Stay Safe, Stay Open plan succeeded in reducing rates from 16% at the beginning of January to less than 1% as of today. Come on. Move it. It's not moving. We're moving it. It's not moving. Technology in the 21st century. But before I move forward, I do want to certainly take a moment and acknowledge also the many folks who have joined us from City Hall as well, including our first Deputy Mayor, Lorraine Grillo. Lorraine. And our Deputy Mayor for Strategic Initiatives, Sheena Wright. I want to take a moment also right now to acknowledge the wonderful team that I have put together here that are going to help me to build a bold future for our school system. And I'm thrilled that we put an A-team together. And it begins with our first Deputy Chancellor, Dan Weisberg. Our Deputy Chancellor for Family and Community Engagement and External Affairs, Kenita. Kenita Lloyd has been with me from the time that I came from the Eagle Academy, and I'm so thrilled because we're going to fully transform the work of engaging our parents and our families in this process. So thank you so much, Kenita. Our chief, who is absolutely going to oversee all of our culture, climate, and wellness initiatives, and I'm thrilled that she's here as well with me, and that's Dr. Joanna Johnson. Our Deputy Chancellor for Teaching and Learning Opportunities, Carolyn Quintana. My strategic visionary, my strategic partner in helping me put all of this together, Savita Bharadwaj. Wow. And on this side, starting his very first day, he's got one of the biggest, boldest jobs that we have in here right now, Dr. Desmond Blackburn, the Deputy Chancellor for Leadership. And the work is going to begin deeply with what we're doing with early childhood education, Dr. Kara Ahmed. Thank you. We're going to keep moving, and we're going to get to everybody else in the course of this speech. Thank you. But it was so important to the city that we kept our doors open, because returning to school was a big step forward toward returning to normalcy. Our public schools are essential to the fabric and economy of New York City, and our families depend on our schools so that they can do their own jobs while knowing that their children are in a supportive environment where they will be academically challenged and held to high expectations every single day. And that's why keeping schools open was a promise that we made on day one of this administration. And stay safe, stay open has worked. On January 3rd, the day I took office, our attendance rate was 65%. And yesterday, it was almost 89%. It's not moving. This is our $38 billion bureaucracy. So let me say this, as we begin to move this process along. There are a whole host of things that have happened since I have been here as chancellor. I have visited almost 20 schools around the city. And some of the things that we have seen have been absolutely unbelievable and incredible. But we have also lost, in the past 5 years, over 120,000 families have left this school system. Now you wrap your mind around that for a moment. That happened before the pandemic, and it was accelerated throughout this pandemic. 120,000 families decided to vote with their feet and to say, we're going to find other alternatives and other choices for our children. That's an indictment on the work that we have done. But we have also, as a team, come together here to figure out how do we make a change. And it started with stay safe, stay open. So, this is what I will do, what I've always done. I'm going to forget the teleprompter. To speak to you from my heart. When I was announced by Mayor Adams, I announced at PS 161, where I graduated from elementary school, I announced on that moment that if you had a job and you worked at Tweed, and your job didn't have a direct correlation to what was happening in our schools, then maybe that job shouldn't exist. And I know people here in the central offices all across the city heard that really well. But let me make it perfectly clear what I meant by that. Because as I've gotten here to Tweed, it's been very interesting. I have met really smart, committed people. People who are working really hard, putting in long hours, people who are super talented and very committed. And yet the results that we have as a school system is completely dysfunctional. So you have to figure, how do we have so many good, smart, committed people, and yet we have such terrible outcomes? There's a disconnect. And one of the reasons there's a major disconnect is reflected in a gentleman who you all see, those of you who come here to Tweed every day, who stands outside on the front steps of Tweed. How many of you have ever seen the gentleman with his sign that says, if we could only teach the kids to read? Well, his name is Bill. I don't know if you knew that. Bill was an educator in Ohio for over 27 years. And for the past 10 years, he stands out in front of Tweed every day, no matter what the weather is, and he holds up his sign that says, if we would just teach our kids to read. So on my second day, as I got out of the car, coming up the steps of Tweed, I saw him, and I went over to him, and I said, I said to him, what's your name? He said, my name is Bill. And I said, my name is David Banks, I'm the school's chancellor. He said, oh, I know who you are. And I said, I completely agree with you. He said, it would solve so many of your problems. If you just figured out to make sure that all of the children learn to read, you will solve your special education issues. It will impact your crime issues. It's what the mayor talks about all the time, upstream and downstream. We have an economy, we have businesses that have been built off of the dysfunction of Tweed. Think about it. We need to teach our kids to read, which, by the way, Bill said to me, and I just want you to know, I've been here for 10 years. You're the first chancellor that's ever said a word to me. And I'm sure there are many of us who work in this building who've also never said a word to him. We think, he's the crazy guy with the sign. But he's brilliant in his simplicity, and it's profound. Teach the kids to read. It should be our most fundamental thing that we do as a school system. There are so many things that are broken as I've come here as chancellor. It's amazing to me. Michael Mogul, the head of the U of T, said to me before I got here, one of the first things you better do, you better fix special education. It's a major problem. And the feds are going to come in and put a monitor on it and take over the whole thing. You don't want that. And by the time I got in my next seat, people told me, you better look into enrollment. It's a huge problem. A lot of issues that you're going to have to deal with. And by the time I got to lunch, they said, by the way, early childhood education, there's a lot of work that you got to do to fix it. I got on the phone with the mayor. I said, why did I take this job? But think about it. $38 billion. I want you to keep that number in your head. We spend $38 billion every single year to get the outcomes that we get. Where 65% of black and brown children never achieve proficiency. It's a betrayal. And that's why we wanted to make this announcement right here today in the hall of the headquarters of the Department of Education. Many members of the media have never stepped foot in here. Many of the elected officials who are here are joining us here for the very first time. They said, I've never been in Tweed. Tweed has almost been this place where you dare not step foot. You're not welcome here. It symbolizes the dysfunction of what we've been talking about. You're absolutely right. I certainly don't need them. So you can hold them. Thank you. There are 4 pillars that I want to talk about that essentially represent what the vision is for going forward that we want to enact. And the first pillar is to reimagine the student experience. We're coming off 2 years of this pandemic. We cannot go back to doing things the way that we were doing them. People are in a hurry to kind of get back to the old normal. We need a new normal. And I'm going to tell you, because the old normal didn't work. So what represents the new normal? We have to create learning experiences where young people are fully engaged in authentic learning experiences that make a difference in their lives. You can go to most schools, and the mayor and I have done it. You sit next to a young person in the 8th grade, the 9th grade, 10th grade, and say, what are you working on? And you know what the response is? I'm doing my work. Doing my work is code for, I don't know what this is. I'm just being compliant. My mother said I had to come to school every day. The teacher put the work up. I'm not trying to get sent to the dean's office. And so I'm just going through the routine of going to school. I have no idea what this lesson means. I have no connection to what it could do for my life. That has to change. So one of the things that we're going to make as the North Star for this work that we're doing, we're going to create career pathways where every young person that goes through our schools is going to be guaranteed that they're going to have the skills to go to college, to get a good job. They're going to understand what it means to take their place in this American workforce. They're going to have the skills that they need to be young people who are ready to take their place in this American society. That's what they're going to need. And the person that I brought here to help us to do that work is Jay Grieve. Jay, would you just stand up? And remain standing. Jade has been engaged in career technical education, creating career pathways for young people all across the world, from Germany to Switzerland to all kinds of cities around this country. She has seen the best and most promising practices for how you can really create opportunities for young people, our students, to be fully engaged in what it means to actually go to school and come out and get off of mommy and daddy's payroll. We're graduating so many. So Jade, I want to thank you so much because the work she's going to be doing is going to be absolutely invaluable, and I appreciate you being on this team. So many of our kids, I visited Rikers Island a couple of weeks ago, and I'm watching these young men and these young women. And a group of young men, I'm talking to them, and they are getting OSHA training, they're getting certification in carpentry and all kinds of stuff, and they're fully engaged. And I said to them, tell me about your experiences when you were in school. And every one of them said school was basically irrelevant. A couple of them said, I barely even went to school. I said, but you're engaged now. And what I realized from them is that they weren't engaged because they were in jail. They actually chose to be in those classes. They didn't have to. One young man put his hand up and he said, if I was doing relevant stuff like this when I was in high school, I would have gone to school every day. Think about the implications of that. That from the time our young people come into kindergarten and then we take them all the way through 12th grade, they have spent all of these years with us. And they come out, far too many of them come out of our schools. And they don't even understand how to open their own bank account. They have no idea about the skills that they need to step into the workplace. What are we doing? If we're not producing young people who can take some of these new jobs, fintech, biotech industry. The career and technical education space is not your granddad's Korean CTE. I'm not talking about wood shop. I'm talking about real jobs that put our young people on a path to economic prosperity. That's what we should be focused on, not just the day-to-day of going to school. Kids ask their teachers all the time, why are we doing this? And they never get good answers. So I would say even to Michael Mogul and the UFT, we're going to work very closely because we need to give our teachers new experiences as well. This is not just about creating internships for kids. Far too many of our teachers who are smart, committed, hardworking, but also have not received the level of exposure to what the world of work really looks like. What does it look like on the other side of the wall when we want to prepare young people to go to work at Google or Microsoft or any of those other kinds of places if our teachers have never even been exposed to those places? So in order for us to reinforce the experiences for our kids, we're going to really have to make sure that we're working really hard to adjust those things for our teachers as well. So that's part of the reimagined school experience. The other part is civic education. We have to have young people who go through our schools who understand what this American democracy really means. We lament the fact that so many millions of Americans never vote. All over the country. They don't get engaged. There's a reason for that. It's not that they're lazy. We have never built that muscle in the K-12 space. Every single school in our system should have a student government. Every single school in our system should be engaging young people to go to the town hall for their local city council person. And we're joined today by the chair of the Education Committee, Rita Joseph, Council Member Rita Joseph, who's going to be working with me, and a number of other electeds who are here as well. I want every young person that comes from a New York City public school to understand what you do. I don't want them to be excited because the mayor is in the room. I want them to be excited because they understand what the mayor does and how the work of the mayor, the governor, the attorney general, the city council, the state legislators, when they understand what those jobs really are and how it impacts their lives. It's not enough to tell kids and young people, you should vote. They have to understand why voting matters and how it can transform their lives. That's what we need to be doing in our public schools. And that's the work that we're going to be fully committed to engaging. How many of you are old enough to remember when Jay Leno was the host of The Tonight Show? Does anybody remember? I know some of us are showing our age, but do you all remember at all when he would do that bit, a walk down Hollywood Boulevard? And he would just stop people randomly on the street and ask them basic, simple questions about American history. And they would get the most ridiculous answers. And we would get a good laugh out of it. But the reality is that it's not funny. Because all of those people that he was stopping, they were all high school graduates. That's what we produce across America. We give you a certificate, but you don't have a lot of skills to come out and go to college or get a good job as soon as you come out of high school, and you don't even know how to engage in this democracy. We must do better, and we absolutely will begin that process of engaging our young people in a much different way. And so that's a little bit about the reimagined school experience. The second part of that work, after the reimagine, my second pillar is to scale, sustain, and restore what works. So here's the rub. With as many challenges as we have in the school system, we have amazing programs that no one knows about. I have visited schools from Queens to, I was in a snowstorm on Staten Island and visited PS 60. And the principal that you should see, they have the most amazing social emotional learning experience that I've ever seen, that they take all their kids through. And as I went through, I said, every school in New York City needs to see this so that they can learn from it. Every school that I've gone to, Thomas Edison High School in Queens, it's not just a career and technical education school. The level of which they're engaging their kids is absolutely incredible. And as I saw it, I said, even if you're not a CTE school, there are lessons that you can learn from a place like this. And we have gems all over the place. But the same way you see that there's been a mystique, a way that keeps people away from Tweed. That's why so many people have never even been in the building. We send that same message even across our schools. That's why it's almost like we've been afraid to tell the good work that we've been doing. That's going to change during this administration. We are going to lift up, we're going to celebrate our teachers, our principals, the great work that's been going on around our schools like you have never seen before. So I think my friend Mark Canizero, I'm not sure where he is, he's the head of the CSA. Mark, I see you, and I told you that there's some amazing things that we're getting ready to do with our school leaders around the city and with our teachers all over this city, because here's the thing that we all need to know. When you lift up the good, when you lift up innovation, it's inspiring and it's instructive for everybody else. But if you never hear about it, we think it doesn't exist. And that's why so many of our parents and our families have left. Because we have broken the trust with our families. And we've got to build that trust back. And in order for us to build that trust back, we've got to tell the stories of what's actually working. The charter schools have done an amazing job of telling their story. That's why people are leaving the traditional public schools and going to private schools or going to charter schools. And this is not a knock on any of them. But it's to say we need to do a much better job of telling the public about the great work that is actually going on in our public schools so that they will continue to build a deeper level of trust with us, number one, and that our other schools can get better by hearing about what's going on in your colleagues' schools. So Carmen Farina, when she was chancellor, had built a Learning Partners and Showcase Schools program. We're going to return that program back to the system. Because the mayor and I were very clear as we came in when we said, it's not that we have to announce all brand new things. Every time you get a new mayor, you get a new chancellor, a lot of times the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater and then we just start all over again with a new shiny thing. We're not interested in that. We're interested in things that work and how do you scale excellence all across this system. And that's what we're going to be very, very focused on and ensuring that that is going to happen. But in order for a number of these things to take place, we're going to have to figure out how we streamline the work that goes on in the leadership across our schools. And we're going to streamline what I consider some level of waste within this department. And so I'm going to announce today that one of the first things that we're doing is I'm eliminating the position of executive superintendents in the New York City Public Schools. And the reason we're doing that is because we have not gotten the level of value added to our schools that is needed for having that position. And here's what we're going to do in place of that. We are going to be bolstering the superintendent's position. So those who are superintendents in our schools right now, and I've spoken to almost all of them, who have said to me, it's very difficult to be a superintendent and you don't really have real authority. So when principals and families go to the superintendent and the superintendent can't give you an answer because they've got to go further up the chain of command, that's not impactful. It doesn't work. So I'm going to ensure that we have superintendents who are going to get increased resources in their budgets, superintendents who are going to get more bodies working within the superintendency, superintendents who are going to be held to account to make sure that they are the final line in terms of supporting our principals and our schools. And that is what is getting ready to happen. The person who is going to be leading that work and rebuilding out this whole way in which we lead our system is Dr. Desmond Blackburn. Dr. Blackburn. But let me tell you what we're going to do in addition to that. And I think we have a few principles here. We are going to create a different paradigm for principals who know what they're doing. Principals who are innovative, principals who have already demonstrated that they know how to get this work done. And mind you, they get this work done not because of the DOE, in spite of the DOE. It's amazing, the most innovative, brilliant principals that I've spoken to anywhere around the system, They figured out how to navigate around this bureaucracy in order to make things happen for their kids. That shouldn't be necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in place a level or a system that will be a level of autonomy for the principals who know how to get this work done. Where they won't be overly managed by a bureaucracy that just sits on top of them and stifles innovation. Because one thing that I know is if we want to transform this system, you will not transform this system from the top down. It will only be transformed by the bottom up, and that's by talking to our parents, our students themselves, our teachers, our principals. They have all of the answers. They have the answers if we would just listen and get out of the way. And that's what I'm going to make sure that we do in this process. The third pillar is we're going to prioritize wellness and its impact on student success. And this is something that the mayor talks about all the time. Healthy food. It's really, really important. That's not just about meatless Mondays or vegan Fridays, but it's about educating our young people about how to eat properly. And you have to get to them at the earliest of ages in order to make that happen. Because if we can educate them about how to take care of themselves and what healthy, whole nutrition really means, then we can make a huge difference over time. The great outdoors. I want to inspire all of our schools to get outside of the four walls of the building. There have been some recent studies which talked about the fact that schools which go on 6 cultural trips during the year, the students do academically much better than schools where the students never left to go anywhere. And why is that? Because the arts feed the soul. Music, theater, dance. It makes all the difference in the world. And our kids need to get there not only in their classrooms, but outside of their classrooms. They need to go on walks through Central Park. You know how many kids who live in Ocean Hill, Brownsville have never been outside of a 4-block radius of their schools? So we want to ensure that all of those young people have opportunities to leave the 4 walls of the school and to make sure that New York City is their full-on classroom. And the 4th pillar is really going to be about how we fully create partnership with our parents as true partners in this work that we're doing. Oh, you can clap, parents. That is part of my DNA. That's how I move. Some of the best things I've ever done in my career have been because I've engaged parents who gave us these great ideas. People might give me the credit, but I got those ideas from the parents who helped shape policy going forward. And I know so many decisions that have been made by Tweed, and they seemingly get made in isolation. I want to change that. I want to make sure that our parents are part of this process and not a photo op after the decisions have already been made. And so Kenita Lloyd is going to be leading that work of how we engage our families, and I just want to make sure that you all know that the work she is going to be doing, nothing is more important to me. And parents, families, communities, community leaders, elected officials, you're all part of this process that's going to help us as we craft this blueprint for going forward and doing the kind of work that we need to do in our public schools. And so, as I wrap up, I simply want to tell you all this. I've said to the mayor from the time he asked me to take this position, I didn't come here for a job. I already had a job. I had a good job. I loved the work that I was doing at the Eagle Academy. It was transformative work. When you talk about the issues of black and brown boys who sit at the bottom of all the indicators of success all across America. And that's a space that I was leaned into, and I'm going to continue to lean into that space. But in bringing this great team here together to work with me, this is the A-team. They really are. And I hope that you all get to know them, because they're going to be playing a critical role as we begin this process of transformation of this system. I spoke to somebody in here just the other day, a woman who's been working in Tweed for years, and she said to me, you know what, Mr. Chancellor, for the first time, I feel a real sense of hope. I feel an energy changing in this building, and I've been talking to people in the schools across the city, and people are feeling a new sense of, a new spirit that is here. That spirit is real. We are going to transform this system. That is why I came here. I didn't come here to play at being chancellor. I came here to make a real difference, and I'm going to do that working side by side with our mayor. That's the reason why I'm here, is because he selected me to be his partner in enacting this bold vision that can truly transform this school system and make a huge difference in the lives of all of your sons and your daughters and all of our children across this system. I ask that you all join me in making this happen. God bless you, and I want to thank everybody for taking the time. Thank you.